So now we are on page 2 of the assignment document, Content Expectations. Construct a thoughtful response reflecting intellectual attentiveness and intellectual depth. So what I want to stress here with the words thoughtful, attentiveness, and depth is that I don't want you to think of this as just another hoop to jump through. Let me just get some sentences out. The grading that I do will be looking to see that you really try to engage with each of your arguments and the task that I have set before you. So be careful not to make superficial claims or platitudes. For another extra credit point, go ahead and give me the definition for platitude and tell me what I mean by don't present any platitudes or give too many platitudes. Or in fact, don't use any platitudes in your response to this. So explain why, elaborate why that's important as you listen, and you'll get an idea of that as you continue to work through the instructions with me. So, you really want to seriously engage with the instructions and the intellectual moves that I want you to make, which we're going to start going over here within this video. So within this video, we're going to cover the 3 steps for the content. So above, the steps were for the pathway, like how you claim a peer or how you access a peer's response. The steps here are for actually executing the intellectual, analytical thinking moves that I want you to make for this assignment. Okay, so step 1 is to create a salutation. Greet your peer by his or her name. You are directly addressing your peer. So this is first person. So you'll be using words like I, you, me, we, and our. Okay, so in philosophy, this is often the way we write. We write in first person. So make sure you keep that in mind. So create a salutation. So then there is a step 2, but in between step 1 and let me say something else. A warning that I want to give you is that while we are using first person and while you are speaking to a peer, and while I do want you to be friendly, I don't want you to be too friendly. So remember, friendliness is a virtue, right? So I'm not saying it's an intellectual virtue, but I'm just saying it's a virtue. So let's say it's a social virtue. You don't want to go to the extremes. I don't want you to be so friendly that you are too informal, right? This is still a college and academic instance of writing. So you want to be friendly in the professional academic setting. So if it helps you, keep in mind that I want you to use first person, but I want you to keep things professional in the first person because this is an academic assignment. It's not just us hanging out at a bar or having pizza, while watching a movie. So this is still an academic professional writing piece, but you are doing it in the first person. Okay, now between step 1 and step 2, I want you to have a little standalone mini paragraph. In this paragraph, you should write 2 to 3 sentences that provide some academic curriculum context for what it is you will present in step 2. So what context or details do I want between step 1 and step 2? Well, to know what details and context I want, we need to go ahead and go over step 2 first. Copy and paste your original response to the text box you get when clicking on your peer's thread. Copy and paste your peer's original response below yours. This is going to make it efficient for me to see who is where. So this just really helps me. So first, paste your response and your peer's response, and I'm going to show you how to do that and give you warnings very soon. So now let's go back to the missing requirement between step 1 and step 2. I said that I want details, context for the information that you present for step 2. So the information then is verbatim your original responses from item 2, which are in the threads in this task folder. So what you want to do is write 2 or 3 sentences about the assignment instructions itself for Unit 1, Task 3. So why do the arguments even exist? What prompted you to construct those arguments? Who told you to write those arguments? What were the instructions? What were you supposed to state first? What came after that? What was the topic about? So you're doing some introductory sentences, giving some context and details for what you're about to present. Now, I don't want context and details with respect to that focus on the topic itself. Like, I don't want you to be talking a lot about free will and, and all that. What I want is context in terms of the assignment, instructions, directions, and focus, that kind of thing. So then that will be, so you'll have the salutation, then you'll have 2 or 3 sentences giving context and details about what it is that you're about to present for step 2, and then you will have step 2. So right now, at this point in the video, I'm going to go over this in more detail. So I do tell you to tell me who is speaking when, and then notice that I say you will get at most half of the points for this task should you fail to include both original responses, as I will not see the content about which you are talking in my grading window. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look again at the dialectic board, as I call it. I hope you guys appreciate the videos. I never used to do videos. I never used to give examples. I just gave the written instructions, and then students had to figure it out on their own. So I have found since I've done the videos that the responses have improved so much. Okay, so here we are in the threads, and actually let me make that appear a little bit differently. Okay, so let me go back to Juliana's and get rid of. I'm in the teacher mode, so there might be things here that you can't do that I can do. One thing I want you to keep in mind is that I don't think you can edit after you have posted. That said, make sure that when you submit, that you're really, really sure that your submission is the one you want me to grade, because I'll only grade the first submission. So make sure that you submit only your final product. Okay, so you might not see edit or delete. So let's say you did claim Juliana. You might not be able to go back into that reply and edit it to take out the claim and post your response. You'll just click on reply again. So again, if you replied to a peer and claimed the peer but didn't post your full response, you might just have to click on reply to that peer to then post your response. So some of you could end up with 2 replies, one being a claim that you are going to respond to that peer, and that anyone who comes across that claim needs to find somebody else. And then you might have a second response that is your submission itself, the actual intellectual content. Okay, but let's say I'm Juliana, and I, as Juliana, have decided that who I'm going to respond to. So according to the instructions, I have to copy and paste my own response into the response of the peer that I am responding to. So let me go back to the thread. Let's say I, Juliana, have decided I'm going to respond to Lauren. Okay, so then I click on reply from within Lauren. Okay, so I am Juliana. I'm going to reply to Lauren. I have to go to Lauren's response. Now, the instructions said, let's double check. So notice what I'm doing. So I think a lot of times students read the instructions and then they think they can just remember everything from the instructions clearly, accurately, and precisely, forgetting that we are limited beings when it comes to our memory and our information processing units, i.e. our brains. So it doesn't hurt to go back and check the instructions. So notice that this says, copy and paste your peer's original response below yours. So that means I need to post my response first. So if I'm Juliana, right, I'm going to post mine first. Please, it makes sense for you to keep the formatting because you're supposed to highlight keywords from your definition. So if your peer followed the instructions or if you followed the instructions, you don't want to get rid of the highlight. Then you have to go back up and copy and paste your peer's argument. If your peer did the proper step of including a reference, make sure you capture that as well. So keep formatting. Do you see how keeping the formatting allowed me to keep Lauren's highlighting? Now, what I would also like for you to do to make it easier on the eyes is just make sure that the font is the same. This would be very helpful. It's a very professional thing to do. So learning some professional things for professional communication. So make sure it's in the same font. If it's not the same font, it'll just have maybe nothing here. I do prefer Arial, so you can click on Arial. And then you can see that this is gray and this is black. So you can go in also and click here and then change that to black. So this is just showing that, you're trying to create a very professional piece of communication. Look at how nice this all looks. Keep in mind that you cannot change your own response in any way. Even if I gave you a lot of critiques or feedback as to any issues with your response, you cannot change your response in any way. It has to be the original response. All right, so am I done with step 2? What so far is missing, right? Step 1 and what I said goes in between step 1 and step 2, right? Also, let's go back to the instructions. So remember, it's always important to go back to the instructions. As you can see here, it says, tell me who is speaking when. Oh, okay, so I need to do that. So then here, I could say, you can say, I might say, I said, Juliana said, Juliana presented the following argument. Juliana, wrote the following in response to the taunt. Juliana, provided the following argument. Juliana, typed up this reasoning for this reasoning, something like that. So I recommend that however you introduce your own reply to the item 2 prompt from Unit 1, Task 3, that you make it the same basic introduction for your peer. So not I, but what you, Lauren, said. And there are other examples. So I gave you 6 examples of how you can do the analysis. So you can look at the other examples for how you can introduce the quoted material. You do not need to use quotation marks around this. I know that you are copying and pasting this. I know that you're not claiming that what Lauren said is what you think. You say Lauren said. So I'm changing this a little bit. Technically, you're supposed to block indent when you quote this much. I'm just worried about the formatting. So if you think you can make it work, you can block indent 10 spaces, but just make sure that if you do that, that you, that's okay if that happens, that you unblock, right? So then your discussion would start off here. And notice how this turned into a link. So now I have to unlink that. Oh, it's not linked. Why is it underlined? I think it is reading it as a link. So I have to highlight that and then it should, that's weird, cancel. So what you could do, I'm trying to think of how we can unlink this. I'll tell you what, if this happens, just delete it because it's going to cause too many problems. Don't worry about what I said earlier about including the URL for any references. I just think that's going to cause too much of some confusion. So now you can see I can unblock it and I can go. Now I can start my discussion here. This is really cool. If you can make this work, this is very cool. This is the actual way that you should be doing this. However, now that I'm thinking about it, the actual way you would do it academic-wise is you would do it like this. You see how I'm using that arrow right there? That's 10 spaces for block indenting. By the way, if you don't see all of the toolbars, you just find this little space right here. Do you see the 3 dots? And you click on that, and then you get more toolbars and icons. So technically, again, you don't block indent your introductory clause because you're not quoting that's not a quote, right? This introductory clause is not a quote. It's an introductory clause for a quote. So again, block indenting. If you do this, you make it work, I might give you a point or 2 of extra credit. So then here's where you would continue on, but just make sure that you unblock by the time you get to here. All right, so let's see if we're done with step 2. Yes, we are done with step 2. Notice that my example, what I have right here, I do not yet have step 1, right? So I might say something like, hello, Lauren. And then here you would do the, I'm not going to do it for you, but here is where the context I just went over goes. I'm going to put this in brackets to symbolize and iterate that this is not something you actually type, right? You know from following this video that there is some information, a little mini tiny paragraph that I want between the salutation and the introduction of the quoted material. your evidence that you will be using in your objective analysis. So don't forget, here's step one, here's step two, but there's something that I want here that I already went over in the video. I hope you took notes. Keep in mind what I said about memory just a moment ago. It's imperfect. It's not always clear, accurate, and precise. And so you want to take notes so you don't forget what you're supposed to type up between step one and step two. All right, I think that I'm going to do a separate video for step three. Keep in mind that I am going to add a missing requirement here, so make sure you do listen to the next video. I'm going to provide a lot of warning, tips, and coaching with respect to horrible mistakes. Horrible sounds horrible, but really bad mistakes that students make. So make sure you follow the next video.